Welcome back, boxing fans, to another Sean Unboxing episode. Thanks for jumping in. Today, as you can tell, we're going to be talking about Floyd Mayweather versus Tank Davis at 29 years of age. And who has done more? Obviously, this is a bit of a story because Floyd Mayweather did help create Tank Davis. And obviously, they have quite the documented back and forth type of relationship. Rocky relationship, as people like to say. So this was one of my subscribers that mentioned this as a possible video. So here you go. So if you're interested in the topic, stay tuned. We'll be breaking it down and talking about it shortly. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So let's just open this up so we can see it. So obviously, Floyd Mayweather has went on to have a great career, is a Hall of Famer, and at this point, it's just is what it is. He did what he had to do. There's nothing else he's going to do to contribute to his resume. Whereas Tank Davis obviously is still early on in his career. He's not quite 30 years old. And obviously, boxing fans have expectations that he does more and that he goes on to prove himself. And obviously, the only way to do that is like everybody else who's a Hall of Famer, by doing it in the ring against quality opposition. So this is not me hating on Tank Davis or hating on Floyd Mayweather. This is me just looking at their two resumes by the same age and giving my opinion on whose resume is better at that time. Obviously, feel free to leave in the comment section below whose resume do you think is better. And off the top of your head, your first expectation would be to say Floyd Mayweather. And this comes to another comment that I saw on another person's channel when they said something that is also going to be discussed today. So let's move forward and look at that. So here we go. So Irish Nick left a comment saying, Sean, video request. Who had the better resume at 29 years of age, Floyd or Tank? So that is what we're doing today. But then I saw this other reply on another feed or video that said Floyd cleared out all of the top dogs at 130, 135, 140, 147, and 154. Tank has to clear out all of the top dogs at 135 and maybe 140 to even be considered the top dog. Shakur, Loma, Haney, and Teal are still in and around his weight class. I doubt he would call out Crawford or Spence for a fight at 147, like Floyd did when he fought De La Hoya and Mosley to fight at 147, while Floyd was still around. But so what he says, there's some truth to it, and then there's some falsities. So we'll discuss that as we move forward. Obviously, as we said, Floyd Mayweather did what he had to do. He's recognized as a Hall of Famer. He's recognized as a legend in boxing. Tank Davis, at the same time, at 29 years of age, we're going to look in to see, is he potentially in a position where he could potentially do what Floyd did. As this guy says, for Tank Davis to really get the recognition as pound for pound number one and one of the best fighters in boxing today, he needs to fight guys like Shakur, Loma, Haney, Teal, up-and-coming fighters like Abdullah Mason, Keyshawn Davis, what's-his-face, Oshaki Foster from 130 pounds, right? These are the fighters in his era that he has to fight to solidify himself as great. If he does not fight these fighters, then obviously he's going to be questioned and criticized by boxing fans, as he should, right? So we will look at this moving forward. Obviously, feel free to give your opinion because obviously this is mostly based on opinion. Obviously, we're looking at the fighters he fought and breaking it down a bit, but people may choose to look at things a little differently. So here we go. Floyd Mayweather. So these are a few of the big names he faced. I'll go through all of them. Obviously, Floyd retired 50-0, even though in truth it was 49-0. Conor McGregor should not count as a professional record, especially a record to break Marciano's 49-0. But you see Jose Luis Castillo, obviously Gennaro Hernandez, DeMarcus Corley, and Diego Corrales, all recognized now as great fighters, right? Specifically, not so much Corley, but Castillo, Corrales, and Hernandez. But when you look at these things and you look closely, well, they are good wins, especially for a young fighter trying to get name recognition. Gennaro Hernandez had already been beaten by Oscar De La Hoya when he was an unbeaten fighter. And it's ironic that when people talk about Oscar De La Hoya, they don't use Gennaro Hernandez as a great victory, even though when De La Hoya fought him, he fought him as an undefeated world champion, right? Who then went on to beat Abdullah Mason, not Abdullah Mason, Azuma Nelson afterwards, right? Showing that even after De La Hoya beat him, he went on to do something career defining, beating the legend, the Hall of Famer in Azuma Nelson. Whereas when Floyd fought him, we know what the result was. He retired after the loss to Floyd Mayweather, right? As far as Castillo and Corrales, well, they were good fighters at that time. Were they the best fighters in their division at 130, 135 pounds? Well, they were champions and top contenders. The question is, did Floyd clean out those divisions, right? By beating Corrales and Castillo, the question answers that whole narrative. No, he didn't. He fought two good fighters. Obviously, Castillo, long legacy of fights, obviously had some losses, had some wins, had a great war between him and Corrales, right? Corrales was an undefeated fighter. But even at that time, right, what was the best win he had on his resume, right? He was getting a lot of attention. He was getting a lot of push from the media. But the question was, who had he beaten that really solidified him as a great fighter at that point of his career? So I'm not trying to dismiss and take these fighters away. They are what they are. You have three world champions. DeMarcus Corley, I can't remember if he was a world champion. You look at his resume here, it's very dismissive and nothing to get exciting about. But obviously that was not his resume when Floyd Mayweather fought him. He's went on to fight for a long time afterwards and took most of those losses post Floyd Mayweather. The thing about him is he was a slick fighter, obviously had a longer reach than a lot of fighters in and around these weight divisions, and was a quality opponent when Floyd fought him. Was he a legend, a Hall of Famer, or somebody of that nature? No, he wasn't. But, we're just trying to find quality opponents on his resume. So then we move through and you see Angel Manfredi, one of the first legitimate wins that Floyd had. Obviously, Manfredi had a few quality wins. He was a Friday night fight type of fighter, a guy that had beaten Arturo Gatti before and had a few other big wins. But after losing to Floyd, he didn't really go on to do too much. He was a good fighter for Friday night fights, but he wasn't elite world champion type of status, right? Just like Arturo Gatti, who obviously had world titles, but never really beat elite world-class fighters ever to win those titles, right? The thing that elevated him was his entertainment factor and the fact that the crowds loved his style. And obviously that was a good win for Floyd, but at 140 pounds, was this the best and was beating Gatti clearing out the division? Was beating Angel Manfredi clearing out 130 pounds? Of course not. They're quality wins on a guy's resume, but in hindsight, when you look at them, we know what they were. They were good fighters, but not elite fighters. Then you get to Sharmba Mitchell, obviously a very good 140-pound fighter. I think he was 140. Obviously, that was a very good win for Floyd as well. Then you get Baldomir and Zab Judah, two welterweights. Obviously, Zab Judah at this point was an undefeated champion. He was seen as the best fighter at welterweight, I think, at the time. Except what happened to him was he ended up losing to Baldomir. So he was literally coming off of a loss to Baldomir before Floyd Mayweather fought him. So a lot of the luster of that victory was lost because he was no longer an undefeated fighter. He lost to Baldomir, who nobody would see as an elite fighter, who Floyd went on to beat and didn't really have too much trouble with at all. And many fighters afterwards went on to just use him for his name recognition. If we really look at the quality wins here that Floyd Mayweather fought by the time he was 29, because we're only looking at Floyd from the beginning of his career, I think it was 19 to 29. It was a 10-year period of his career, 10 years. And obviously there was other opponents that he fought during this period of time, but these are by and far the biggest name opponents that he faced. You have Gennaro Hernandez, who I think is a Hall of Famer. Castillo and Corrales, I'm not sure if they are Hall of Famers, but obviously two very good fighters. So there's three really good fighters. Then, of course, you have Zab Judah, number 4. So that's really the crux of Floyd Mayweather's career at 29 years of age, right? One fighter on his way out the door, another fighter who was seen to be elite but was coming off of a loss, and two fighters that's best fights were amongst each other, right? And then a bunch of fighters that were good opponents, but none of them were seen as elite fighters. So let's move forward. And as I say, I'm not trying to dismiss Floyd Mayweather. If you think I missed somebody that deserved to be in this conversation, I know obviously there was a sparring partner for Cotto, the Puerto Rican fighter, but he never beat anyone before he fought Floyd, and he never beat anyone after he fought Floyd. There was a few other fighters with undefeated records, but they never went on to beat any quality opponents, right? He fought these guys that had O's on their resume, but I don't know if they ever were world champions. If they were, I would have put them on the list. And if I missed somebody, my apologies. Leave it in the comment section below. Now we get to Tank Davis. And you have Jose Pedraza. Jose Pedraza is seen by a lot of people as Tank Davis's best win. This was his first world champion, kind of like Floyd Mayweather's victory against Gennaro Hernandez. Obviously, Gennaro Hernandez had bigger wins on his resume than Pedraza. I mean, just a victory over Hall of Famer Azuma Nelson is better than anything Pedraza has. He also has went on to become a 2-weight world champion, which is significant. He lost to guys that were elite fighters, Tank, Lomachenko, and then the guys at 140, which was obviously his 3rd weight division. So you can understand him not being as dominant when he stepped up and was now facing bigger fighters. Was still competitive, but wasn't able to beat these fighters that were bigger. Then, of course, Cristobal Cruz, which was really Tank Davis's first world champion that he faced. Cristobal Cruz had double-digit losses, but he was a really rugged, tough Mexican fighter who had beaten quality fighters before Tank Davis faced him. Obviously, by the time Tank Davis faced him, he was a shell of himself. But it was that step-up fight when you need to fight a rugged, experienced fighter who wasn't coming to fucking lose or to quit. That was Cristobal Cruz. Then, of course, he faced Yuriorkis Gamboa. Yuriorkis Gamboa at one time was considered potentially a pound-for-pound quality fighter. But then he got beat by Bud Crawford and then basically disappeared into nothingness until, of course, Tank Davis and his team pulled him out of fucking, dried storage and brushed him off and put him in the ring for a WBA regular title when he wasn't even ranked by the WBA previously, right? So while he had name recognition, you can't really look at that win and think of it as anything very significant, because this was a guy who I think lost to Sosa, right, in a previous fight, and had previously lost to fighters that had double-digit losses and wasn't an elite fighter anymore. Then, of course, we have Leo Santa Cruz. Leo Santa Cruz was moving up to his 4th weight division, fought for Tank Davis's vacant belt against a guy that wasn't even ranked by the WBA, a cherry pick fight so that Leo Santa Cruz could hit a home run, make a statement, which would then sell Tank Davis's first pay-per-view. But of course, what happened was that Leo Santa Cruz looked like garbage against that fighter, edged out a victory, but wasn't impressive. And then Tank Davis, because that was the fight scheduled, ended up facing him and ended up knocking him out in sensational fashion, right? Nobody really felt that Leo Santa Cruz was going to beat Tank Davis because he hadn't looked dominant for a long time. He didn't have power. He wasn't the natural 130-pound fighter. I know JB likes to say he had 2 fights at 130 pounds, but that's a blatant lie. All you have to do is go to fucking BoxRec and you can see he had 1 fight at that weight class. Let's just prove it for the fucking 27th time, because you can show people facts, but then they still don't even fucking believe it, because that's how ridiculous they are. Okay. It's easy to find this because obviously Tank Davis is a highly ranked fighter. So you go to rankings, his name is right up there at number 3 behind Crawford and Inouye. And then we scroll down and we try to find Leo Santa Cruz. He's right there, 37-1-1 by the time Tank Davis fought him. And then we look at who he faced before fighting Tank Davis. So he fought Miguel Flores for the WBA Super World title that was vacant. Flores lost 1 point for holding in round 8. It was a 130-pound fight. Flores weighed 130. Santa Cruz weighed 129 and a half. If we go down to Rafael Rivera, who was the guy he faced before him, you will find that this fight happened at 126. So there you go. 2 fights before Tank Davis, Flores, and Rivera. One at 126, one at 130. And then if you just scroll up a little bit, you can see Tank Davis is right there. And then, of course, he just fought Keenan Carbajal in 2022 and also did not look fucking good in that fight. So, well, both Gamboa and Leo Santa Cruz have good name recognition, kind of like Floyd Mayweather beating Gennaro Hernandez. At this point of their career, that's what they were. Name recognition, but not elite quality victories. So you got Petraza, right? Floyd had who? Corrales, Castillo. Arguably, many people feel he lost the first Castillo fight and then beat Castillo in the rematch. So that's something that also has to be mentioned. Now we get to the other big names on his fight, on his card, and you got Mario Barros, who now is a real world champion, but literally was elevated by the WBC. Hasn't beaten anybody, but because he is the highest ranked fighter by the WBC, which doesn't really mean too much, he's obviously now elevated to the WBC champion. Of course, Ryan Garcia, who's never been a world champion and probably never will. Isaac Cruz, who when Tank Davis fought him, was barely a top 10 lightweight. The only reason he got the fight because he was a replacement fighter for Rolly Romero, who had sexual harassment, legal issues that stopped the fight from happening. Obviously, Cruz went on to beat Rolly Romero and now is a legitimate world champion. So Barrios, Cruz, now, after facing Tank Davis, have both went on to become world champions. But you got to see what they do now that they're champions. See if Mario Barrios is going to beat anyone to defend his title. See if Cruz is going to beat anyone to defend his title. Obviously, Ryan Garcia is going to be out of the ring for at least a year and then probably just rematch Devin Haney in a fight that, is it really going to be that interesting? Then, of course, you have Hector Garcia, who was a 130-pound WBA champion. So he wasn't a 135-pound fighter. Tank Davis literally brought up a fighter from 130 to 135 to knock him out and then send him back down to his division. He went back down to his division. So it's not like he naturally grew out of that division and moved to 135. Hector Garcia moved back down to 130 and defended his title and ended up losing in his next fight. And then, of course, Frank Martin, who was a 29-year-old prospect who had never beaten a top 10 opponent in his career. So, well, obviously, Tank Davis's resume is more modern. We relate to it a little more because it's been recent, so we may have recency bias. When we look at this group here, is there anyone that you can compare to Zab Judah? Right? Mario Barros, Garcia, Cruz, and Martin. Are any of these fighters somebody that you can put in the same class as a Zab Judah? Right? The obvious answer is no. Nobody here can be compared to a Zab Judah, who went on to become undisputed, but at least unified, something none of these fighters have ever done and probably never will do. Right? So obviously Zab Judah is much better than anyone here. And as far as the second page, you can take off Gennaro Hernandez, and now you just compare Corrales and Castillo to Petraza and Leo Santa Cruz. And while there may be similarities between them, do you think that Pedraza and Leo Santa Cruz are better than Corrales and Castillo, right? I would have to say no. I would lean towards Castillo and Corrales as better opponents than either Pedraza or obviously Leo Santa Cruz. Both Corrales and Castillo went on to get big victories after losing to Floyd Mayweather. Leo Santa Cruz hasn't done anything since losing to fucking Tank Davis, right? Neither has Gamboa. Pedraza went on and won a title, but who did he beat? He beat Beltran, and then ended up getting beat by Lomachenko, which isn't the end of the world. He did beat Beltran, which was a good win. So, but what would you say that was as good as what Corrales and Castillo did? No. And that's why people talk about Pedraza as Tank Davis's best opponent on his resume. Now here, of course, the biggest name opponent is Ryan Garcia. But Ryan Garcia is no Zab Judah. He may punch like a fucking mule, but that doesn't mean that he's a quality fighter. So at this point, based on Tank Davis's career, 10 years as a pro, Floyd Mayweather's career, 10 years as a pro, you'd have to favor Floyd Mayweather. But at the same time, it shows you that up until the point where Floyd Mayweather was 29 years of age, he didn't do fucking that much, which is why he wasn't really rated that high on many people's pound for pound lists, why he wasn't getting a ton of buzz, why he was leaps and years, behind fucking Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Oscar De La Hoya, and Roy Jones and Julio Cesar Chavez, because those fighters were just way bigger at this time, and understandably so, because this goes into the second part of this question, right? Did Floyd clear out 130, 135, 140, 147, 154? Clear out means you beat all the best guys in the division. Right here, we have the list of guys he fought at 29. Obviously, we have guys that he faced afterwards. But again, Oscar De La Hoya was 154. So slap him on the edge here. And so by beating Gennaro Hernandez, Corrales Castillo, Gatti, and Judah, and then De La Hoya, did Floyd clear out these divisions by beating all the best fighters in them? Obviously not, right? Hatton was a 140-pound fighter, and you could put him right in that group with Gatti, but he didn't fight him at 140. He fought him at 147. So he didn't clear out 140, right? 154, he didn't face fucking Lara, even though he did beat Canelo later on, which was quality win. But there were other champions in the division. He didn't clear them out. He didn't try to fight any of them. At 147, what he ended up doing after fighting a guy coming up from lightweight, Juan Manuel Marquez, right, coming out of 2 years of retirement. So instead of fighting the top guys at 147, which he could have done, he retired from the sport for 2 years, allowing all those fighters to fight each other. And then he came back, fought a lightweight, who he pulled up 2 weight divisions. And then faced who? Mosley, who wasn't the same fighter anymore after his wars he'd had. Cotto, who at that time was even a 147-pound fighter, or was he a 154-pound fighter? Right? Obviously, later on in his career, from 30 until 36 or whatever, that's when he got most of the big names on his resume, right? Hatton, Marquez, Pacquiao, De La Hoya, Cotto, Canelo Alvarez. And that's about it, right? Those 6, which obviously are legacy wins, which is why Floyd Mayweather is a Hall of Famer. But like Tank Davis, up until the point where he was 29 years old, he didn't really do that much. You just saw his resume. And obviously he had more fights, I think, than Tank Davis did. But the point was, who were the elite fighters that he faced? And to the other question, did he clear out 130 by beating Gennaro Hernandez? Did he clear out 135, 140, 147? He retired at the midst of 147. And 154, he faced De La Hoya and he faced Canelo Alvarez, which were two good wins at that weight class. But would you consider that? Oh, I guess you could throw Cotto in there too. Okay, so there's three good wins from that division. So that might be the one division that you could say he was most close to fucking clearing out. He didn't fight Erislandy Lara, which we know why, because stylistically that would not have been an easy fight. So he avoided and ducked him. At 147 pounds, he literally retired in the midst of his career for 2 years. And at 140, he didn't fight any of the top guys. Hatney pulled up to 147. And then fucking Gatti was far from the best fighter at 140 pounds at any time. I'm not going through, but you can go check out who were the champions in these divisions when Floyd Mayweather's around. I mean, Mosley was a 135-pound champion at 135 when Floyd Mayweather's around there. He didn't fight Mosley at 135 or 140, where obviously Mosley was at his best when he was fighting De La Hoya and what's his face, the other black guy who died in a motorcycle crash. What's his name? Leave in the comment section. But like, he didn't fight those guys. A bunch of good Mexican champions. I can't remember that one guy that had good knockout power, and the Cuban guy, Castillo, Corrales, Casamayor, right? There was a bunch of fighters. Didn't fight Ricky Hatton or Tim Tszyu at 140. Tim Tszyu at 140 didn't fight him, right? Retired from 147 and didn't fight Paul Williams, Margarito, fucking Shane Mosley. I think there was a few other people too that I can't think off the top of my head. But obviously Cotto was there at that time as well. So retired and allowed these fighters to all fight one another, beat the crap out of each other. And then afterwards, when basically they were all done, shot, then he moved back to welterweight when the biggest fighter and the name of the division was a lightweight in Manny Pacquiao, a small fighter who he was longer than and naturally bigger than. But I ain't trying to hate on Floyd. I'm just saying, stating that comment that he cleared out 130, 135, 140, 147, 154. Well, no, he didn't. Back in these days, people jumped through divisions like Floyd, Pacquiao, right? De La Hoya, and others, Cotto and others. These guys did not try to clear out divisions. What they tried to do is win a title and then move up to another weight class and become 4 or 5 weight world champions. There was not an onus back then to become unified or undisputed champions, not like there is today. So you need to give guys like Inouye, Usyk, Bud Crawford, shitload of respect, because literally they're doing something that these fighters back then didn't do. Right? The good thing about De La Hoya, when you go look at his resume, he did fight the best guys, right? And took losses in the process because he was literally fighting all the best guys in and around those weight divisions. Compare what he did at those weight divisions compared to what Floyd Mayweather did. When he fought Gennaro Hernandez at 130, Gennaro Hernandez was an undefeated world champion who then went on to beat Azuma Nelson after losing to Oscar De La Hoya, right? So, put that into context. And then who did he fight at 135? And then 140, Julio Cesar Chavez, fucking Pernell Whitaker, like, and obviously far more than that. And then 147, like, was a fucking gauntlet, right? 154. And then even went up to 160 and fought the number one guy who's a Hall of Famer, Bernard Hopkins. So I ain't trying to hate on Floyd. I know JB is going to take this as hate, but don't take it as hate. Make a video, break it down, and prove where I'm incorrect. Prove that Floyd cleared out 130, 135, 140, 147, and 154, right? Because I ain't saying he's not a Hall of Famer and great. I just said his resume at 29 years of age, after being in the pros for 10 years like Tank Davis, it is slightly better than Tank Davis's resume, which also gives Tank Davis a little credit because his resume is not as bad as people try to make it out to be. But yet, it ain't that great, because we can look at Oscar De La Hoya's resume from when he was 29. Let's do that. let's just do it as a quick comparison. I know I didn't put it here, but I just want to, you know, make a quick comparison because people will try to say things, but, talk is cheap. So who was I going to say? De La Hoya. Who did De La Hoya fight? Yeah, like after Zab Judah and Baldomir, who did he fight? Then he fought De La Hoya at 154, Ricky Hatton at 147. Took 2 years off from 2017 to 2019. Fought lightweight Juan Manuel Marquez, Shane Mosley, who obviously had been through quite a bit of wars since 2007. 3 years of fighting top level dudes, and then went on to face fucking Victor Ortiz, bum, Miguel Cotto, great victory, uh, Robert Guerrero, and then faced Alvarez. So you can see one bum, one good fighter. And then obviously Maidana, who had already been beaten several times. Amir Khan beat him. And then faced Pacquiao and then Berto and fucking McGregor. So, I mean, you look at, Pacquiao, Alvarez, Cotto, Mosley, Marquez, Hatton, De La Hoya. So 7 big name Hall of Fame fighters, all later in his career compared to the first 10 years. But let's look at De La Hoya. So De La Hoya, I don't know. Let me just see. I don't know what year his birthday was. So let me just ask a question to the internet. What year was Oscar De La Hoya born? 1973. Okay. So he was born in 73. He made his debut in 92. So, like Floyd, also was 19 years of age. So, we'll start at the beginning from 1992 and go to 2002. And that's 10 years of his career, obviously, that period of time. So we go through his resume, we scroll up. We get Jimmy Brendel, who he won his first title against, an undefeated fighter. Then he faced Jorge Paez, a world champion. Then John Molina, world champion. Rafael Ruiz, a world champion. Then Gennaro Hernandez, undefeated world champion. Jesse James Leija. And then Julio Cesar Chavez, 96, 1-1. And then Miguel Angel Gonzalez, that's the guy I was talking about, 41-0. I think he had like 36 KOs. Then Pernell Whitaker, 41-1. And then Hector Macho Camacho. What year was I going to? 92 to 2002. Okay. Camacho, then Julio Chavez again, and then Ike Corte, Obakar, then lost a controversial loss by majority decision to Felix Trinidad, a fight that most people feel he won, but he dropped the ball because he took off the last few rounds. Then faced Daryl Coley, was 34-1-2 at that time. And then Shane Mosley, lost to him, undefeated Shane Mosley. Then faced Arturo Gatti before Floyd again. Javier Castillo, and then Fernando Vargas in 2002. And that's when he was 29 years old. So you just look at that compared to fucking Tank Davis and Floyd Mayweather. And I ain't trying to hate, but let's think of real quality fighters he faced. And he took some losses because look at who he faced. Fernando Vargas, Shane Mosley, Felix Trinidad, Obakar, Ike Corte, Julio Chavez twice. So that's like 7 top-level fighters. Yes, we count him twice because he fought him twice. Hector Macho Camacho, Pernell Whitaker, Miguel Angel Gonzalez, that's 10. Jesse James Leija, 11. Gennaro Hernandez, 12. Rafael Ruiz, 13. So we'll put it at 13. I won't even count Brindle or Jorge Paez at this point. So 13 quality fighters he faced by the time he was 29 years of age. And he took 2 losses during that time, one to Mosley and one to Felix Trinidad, right? Two Hall of Famers in both competitive fights, right? One majority decision. I don't remember what happened to the first Mosley fight. Was that split decision or what? Yeah, split decision. So both of those fights super close. And then, of course, we see what he did afterwards. Faced Mosley again, faced Felix Sturm, who went on to become a long reigning middleweight champion, faced B-Hop, Ricardo Mayorga, Floyd Mayweather, and then Manny Pacquiao. So, that's what he did after he was 29 years of age. Didn't fight as long as Floyd Mayweather, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 top level fighters at that time. All basically Hall of Famers. I think Felix Sturm is probably going to be a Hall of Famer. Maybe not, but the rest will be. So, right, you can see De La Hoya did a lot in the first 10 years of his career. A lot, right, compared to Mayweather and compared to, obviously, Floyd Mayweather. And if you talk about clearing out divisions, he did much more of a job of clearing out divisions than either one of those two fighters have done. Actually unifying titles, right? And taking on top level fighters in unification. I mean, Tito Trinidad, right, for the IBF and WBC title, unification fight, fighting another top world champion. Shane Mosley for the IBA, not a big one, and the WBC title. Pseudo unification. Ike Corte, Obakar world title fights, Julio Cesar Chavez, right? Hector Macho Camacho. These are all welterweight wins. Camacho, Rivera, Chavez, Corte, Carr, and then Trinidad. Like, that's literally taking on the best fighters in the division. Pernell Whitaker, was that a welterweight fight? Yeah, Pernell Whitaker, also a welterweight fight. Miguel Angel Gonzalez, 140-pound fight. Julio Cesar Chavez, first fight, 140-pound fight. Daryl Tyson, 140. Jesse James Leija, 135. So at 140, Daryl Tyson, step-up fight, veteran, and then two top fighters, the two best fighters at the division in undefeated Miguel Angel Gonzalez, and then obviously Julio Cesar Chavez. Combined record of 138 and 1-1. That's two fighters, and the combined record, because we know JB loves combined records, 138, 1-1. That's who Oscar De La Hoya fought at 140 pounds. But as I say, I'm not trying to hate. This was like somebody who was asking me a serious question about comparing Floyd Mayweather's career to Tank Davis's, as far as what they did in the first 10 years of their career. And going into it, I just assumed Floyd Mayweather obviously had done a lot more. But when you really look at it, it's not that much more, right? Obviously, I gave him praise because Zab Judah, even though he's coming off of a loss, is a better win than I think anybody that Tank Davis has fought at 135 pounds. And then obviously Castillo, Corrales are better wins than anyone he faced at 130 pounds, right? Pedraza and Santa Cruz. But feel free to leave your comments below. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any requests that you want me to do, feel free to leave a super chat and a recommendation, and I'll try to get to that for you. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Enjoy what's left of your weekends.